My hometown had received particular attention because it was the headquarters of the Cherry Hill Gambinos. Giovanni, John, Giuseppe, Joe, and Rosario, Sal, Gambino, cousins of the late Don Carlo Gambino, and partners with Bruno. Authorities alleged these Gambinos were under scrutiny because they were kingpins in the Pizza Connection heroin ring, where drugs were distributed through a network of pizza parlors. Put differently, Cherry Hill was considered by law enforcement to be the headquarters of heroin importation and distribution in the United States. This warranted a mention in a report prepared by Reagan's President's Commission on Organized Crime report. Bruno's legacy as an anti-drug boss was being questioned because while his men were said not to traffic in drugs, which was fabled to be the rule in the mafia, at the very least he had been in business with men who did. At most, he had been their partners. The Sopranos boss, Johnny Sack, once said, "For God's sake, we bend more rules than the Catholic Church." The Gambino's headquarters was Valentino's nightclub, down the street from my high school, a 5-minute walk from my house. The brothers' adjacent homes, essentially a compound, were close by. One of them was emblazoned with a stained glass G. Al Martino, who played the Frank Sinatra-like figure Johnny Fontaine in The Godfather, lived around the corner from me in a house with a horseshoe driveway and brick arches that mimicked Roman aqueducts. The Latin Casino Theater restaurant across the street from the Garden State Park racetrack had also been around the corner and had been Sinatra's go-to venue in the Philadelphia area. Then there was the Sanssouci restaurant, now long gone, which had been the supper club where Bruno had been known to induct or make members into his family. In the 1980s, denizens of the area turned the local mob war into a spectator sport, betting on one faction or another, bragging about any attenuated personal link to the boys. My aunt sat next to Skinny Joey's barber in high school. You could be a solid citizen in my community and be acquainted with or related to someone from the racket world. My family had been in the region since the early 1900s, and we had and knew our share of characters going back to Prohibition. Most of us were law-abiding and boring. I was an undersized, straight-arrow kid focused on schoolwork, tennis, and student government. If I was a badass, then Mr. Rogers was John Gotti. When Sue, my boss, asked about my hometown, a few other colleagues perked up at the word mafia. I defended Cherry Hill with the usual rhetoric about gangsters being a tiny fraction of the population. You couldn't bring up Muhammad Ali? He lived in Cherry Hill, I said. So does the Flyers goalie Bernie Parent. Keith Richards stayed in Cherry Hill for a month in rehab. Nobody cared. They didn't want to hear about the teachers, doctors, and lawyers. They wanted to hear about the new boss, the maniacal Nicodemo Little Nicky Scarfo, Philip Chicken Man Testa, who had just been blown up by a nail bomb under his front porch, memorialized in a just-released Bruce Springsteen song. Philip Crazy Phil Leonetti, Anthony Tony Bananas Caponegro, recently found dead in the trunk of a car with $100 bills stuffed in various orifices after having been tortured for plotting against Bruno. Raymond Long John Martirano, a Cherry Hill resident, reportedly a methamphetamine kingpin. The pint-sized Harry the Hunchback Ricobene, who was making a play for the throne. And my late neighbor, the 750-pound Sylvan Cherry Hill Fats Skolnick, who, before his death, had been driven around in the back of a mail truck, which provided him a bit more breathing room as he expanded like Violet Beauregard in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Then another woman in our White House retinue, I'll call her Jane, said something that shocked me.